Great to have everyone here. Let's officially kick off the meeting. It's been kind of a rough week in crypto, as everyone knows, but I think that I can speak for at least myself and I think several other people who have been holding OUSD over the last few days that, we're pretty happy that we are doing that. It and all the other top stable coins have maintained their price pretty close to $1, which has been good to see, despite all the volatility from the past few days. And also, our APY appears to be holding steady well above 20%. And of course, we measure that on a trailing 30-day calculation. And I know Josh would say that, while that's a nice yield, the important part is that OUSD just always outperforms the alternatives, other yield farms and ways that you can get interest with stablecoins. We should always be outperforming those substitutes. Today, during the meeting, I think we'll check in on some of our engineering priorities. We might get a liquidity mining update, and then talk about ways that we could improve how funds are allocated across strategies for OUSD. And as always, if this is your first time here or you just want to say hello, we'd love to hear from you near the end of the call, just like we did from Leonardo a minute ago. So be thinking about that if you'd like to say hi. We'd love to know what brought you here, what you're working on, what you're excited about, and that sort of thing. So we can kick this off with a couple of announcements, but feel free to interrupt me if there's anything else that anyone wanted to start with. We have meeting notes that I just posted maybe 30 minutes ago in the Origin Dollar discussion channel in Discord. So be sure to join us if you're not already here listening live. That's at originprotocol.com/Discord. And while we're on that topic, I'll jump to the second of the two announcements that are in the notes, which is that this past week, I can't remember what day, maybe Thursday or Friday, we had an impromptu code review session by our very own Daniel Von Fange. And it appeared to be well received by at least one or two pretty high-profile names in the DeFi and smart contract security space. So I'm certainly looking forward to more things like that. Daniel, it sounded like you might do something sometime this week. How did that go?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. In hindsight, I should have recorded it, but may actually do kind of for the dripper contract that we may be building, maybe just kind of build a lot of it in live sessions, from design through writing the code through all the tests and deploying and reviewing on it.
That would be incredible.
Try to put those, give people advance notice. The other one I only gave like 5 minutes notice on.
Yeah, and if you're able to record those, I think that would be amazing content for a variety of people to be able to watch. Cool. Well, thanks for doing that, and congratulations to anyone who caught it. I was in a meeting and missed all but the last minute or two. The other announcement that I was aware of, I think Coleman could update us on what's going on at Maker Protocol.
So OGN and OUSD were up for community votes, what are called green light polls for inclusion as a collateral type in MakerDAO to use to mint DAI, their stablecoin. OUSD did not pass the vote, but OGN did pass the community vote. I put a graphic in the, Origin Dollar and DeFi discussion channel showing the flow chart of what happens next. So we already went through Maker Improvement Protocol 6, MIP6, introduced the two assets. We just finished with the community green light, which is like a public poll from maker holders. So OGN passed and OUSD did not. So now we're moving on to domain green light, where there's going to be 4 teams that review OGN. One is like a smart contracts team, the other is a legal team, the other is a risk team, and then the last one is the Oracle team. And if it passes all of these 4 areas of review, then the maker team is going to begin working on listing OGN as a collateral type. Or if there's some problems, like that there are other things that could happen. But hopefully everything goes smoothly, and OGN's soon a collateral type for minting DAI, which means a lot of utilities added to OGN holders who want to leverage their position or add more stables or use stables to farm, yield farm in DeFi. They don't have to sell their OGN any longer. They can just mint DAI and use that to swap for OUSD or whatever they want to do.
This is great news. Thank you, Coleman, for pushing this forward. This is really, really big for OGN. It'd be great to get OUSD supported at some point, but I think we've got a ways to go, and we have some feedback now from the community.
Yeah, I think most of the feedback was DAI is already heavily collateralized by other stablecoins, so I think OUSD failed for that reason. It wasn't because of any sort of security concerns or anything like that. It was just, I think the community felt there was already like USDC, USDT, etc.
Makes sense.
So
looking at the the next reviews that we're going to be doing, smart contract risk, etc. I think the only thing that sort of jumps out at me that we could do to sort of get ahead of any objections would be adding a time lock in front of the governor for OGN. I'm not sure how much work that would be for us to update that. But given we haven't been doing any, making any changes to that contract since deploying it, really, it feels like we could quite easily put a time lock in there, and then also sort of get ahead of any concerns that we could, abuse the governance controls on that contract.
So we just switch it to using the OUSD governor?
That would be my thought if that's easy enough for us to do.
I think that'd just be one proposal to switch the governance over. I haven't looked at the contracts, but it should just be as easy as having anything else be the owner.
Yeah, it seems the easiest. I don't see any downside.
Yeah, it seems like a good thing for us to do all around. Arguably we should have had this in place before. It just didn't get prioritized because none of the centralized exchanges seem to care that much.
All right, I'll make sure that it's on the list for future priorities. Coleman, do you have any sense for how long that process might take, or is it pretty open-ended? That maker.
I think it depends on the asset that they're reviewing. I can look for more guidelines or try to get an estimate. Their governance process is pretty complex, so I don't have an answer right now.
So if I'm looking at this chart, this was basically the vote on it. From now, it's go forward unless one of these teams has a problem with it. But this was the community vote on it.
Yeah, this was a community vote, the maker holder vote. But a lot of assets that pass the community vote fail the domain work.
Well, cool. Thanks.
I'd say timing-wise, if it's such an easy fix for us to update the governor, let's go ahead and prioritize that. As my impression is that that could be a sticking point for them.
Yeah, I can sim it this afternoon, and then it should just be as simple as a single call from a multi-sig.
Sounds good.
Or probably two calls, but yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. Any other announcements or things to flag that come to mind? If you think of something, don't hesitate to interrupt. But otherwise, let's see if we can get a liquidity mining update from Josh.
Yep, so it was another big week in the bribe world. Despite the market being in a mess, we're still over $14 million worth of bribes spent this round. The OUSD pool earned 4.8% of those, and this is down from 6.27% last round. Of course, the price of OGN had a big impact on that. And this, of course, is just preliminary numbers. This will be closing at 7 p.m. Eastern or midnight UTC today. We're on track to win 2.95% of the vote from Convex. And then our pool on Convex is returning 10.07% APY right now. So still pretty good. This is at least good enough to retain the capital that we have, as farmers don't want to move funds around too much. Is still pretty good. We're current holdings for Origin Treasury. We have 217,000 vote locked Convex, and then last week we asked for people to delegate their locked Convex to originteam.eth, and we had free wallets do that. So thank you to those of you who did that. We now have an additional 77,000 vote locked Convex that we will be voting on behalf of for vote Origin pool. So thanks to those of you who did it. If there's others listening that also have vote locked Convex, want to help out, you can delegate that to originteam.eth, and we will put those votes to good use. Any questions on this? All right, back to you, Micah.
I had a question that is not directly related to those incentives, but we obviously changed the redeem fee, I guess about a week ago, and
Yep.
I was certainly expecting to see more redeems than we had. I think we just had a handful, and total supply of OUSD is down by I don't know, 10 or 20 million, something like that. Anybody have any thoughts on why that is? I mean, was that surprising to you or not?
I think if you look at our curve pool, we're slowly creeping back to where you would expect. I think we could see, basically to harvest, you have to do one of two things. You either have to have a lot of capital, which limits the number of people who can do this, or you need to, be smart enough to know how to write a flash loan contract to be able to arbit that way. And so there's just like a limited number of people who have the skills or the capital to be able to do that. And so I think what we're seeing is just, it's slowly edging towards where we'd expect. It's just not happening as quickly as it could. But I think we're gradually moving in the direction that the economic incentives would suggest.
I think a lot of people have just pulled their OUSD out of the curve pool and made it into plain OUSD over the last couple of weeks. If you look at the charts, and not everybody, and not even the majority of people, but a substantial portion has shifted that way. And when that OUSD shifts that way, it basically rebalances the curve pool at the same time.
Yeah, and that makes total economic sense as well, given Convex pool is returning a 10% APY, and OUSD, native OUSD is returning 2.5 times that.
All right, should we check in on engineering priorities for the current sprint? There are two big projects that we're in the middle of that we've talked about here many times. Doman, I think you've made a lot of progress on the harvest upgrades. Do you want to give an update on where we stand there? I know that Daniel did a pretty thorough review today.
To continue on that, thanks, Daniel. It seemed like you looked at the code and all the safety considerations very thoroughly, and I'm happy about that because this pull request changes a lot of things. That's also one of the reasons, unfortunately, that it's pushed. It's been pushed back on so many times, like 2 or 3 times to different sprints. We just have to be really sure, that things are gonna work as expected, because there are new functionalities added, like we're able to configure, Uniswap addresses and how much rewards are going to be given to whoever calls the bots in public, who's going to call the harvest function. And slippage is also, for example, now configurable. So a lot of moving parts, and I'm very happy that like another set of eyes is giving this like a very, very thorough review. So I'm going over these notes now and going to so we'll probably have to discuss on at least 2 or 3 of them, because and I'll ping for example Josh and Micah and Daniel and Tom if you'll chime in on those things, but I expect that we're probably at least like a week, like 3 to 5 days of code polishing away, and then probably maybe Daniel could give a better estimate, because this is my first time deploying it, but I think it's going to be like a larger deploy, so it might take more time, but it's really hard for me to estimate how much. So yeah, Daniel, if you maybe have like a good estimate what this sort of deploy time-wise would take. Okay, that would be my point.
In theory, as long as we've got it all written up in the PR with the deploy, all the deploys basically take the same amount of time to actually run. Mm-hmm. And since we will have it all tested in the PR, I don't think deploy time is a very different consideration on it. We just have to write all that stuff beforehand.
Cool. Okay, great. Then very cool to learn that's a constant. Yeah. So that's it, I guess.
Great work on this, Doman, and thanks, Daniel, for such a thorough review. I think it's a great example of the importance of checklists, and how a good example of just how thoroughly we review things from a security standpoint here at Origin, and how high of a priority we make on keeping the fund safe. So great work all around on this pull request. It's gonna be really cool.
Thanks, guys. How about Tom? It seemed like you got some answers to some of your questions for the on-chain governance project. How's that coming along?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I sort of started off just with a straight fork of Compound's Governor Bravo. But then I discovered the Open Zeppelin governance system that they've built, which is sort of a modular system that you can plug in different things that you might need. The hard bit, I guess, we've got is sort of merging the Compound side of things and the Curve side of things with the Vote escrow token for governance power. So I'm sort of trying to merge those two and work with a ERC20 contract that adheres to this Open Zeppelin governance system that can also, boost the governance power with lockups. I think the hardest part about it is probably sort of the linear decay approach that vote escrow tokens normally take, where your voting power decays over time. Towards the end of the lockup, you're sort of back at the minimal voting power, the 1-to-1. But it's going quite well. I've added a few more notes to the GitHub issues, so check those out if you're interested.
Sorry, I lost you guys, but I heard everything you said, Tom. Anybody have any questions for Tom or thoughts on governance?
Tom, is the current idea of voting power not decreasing when the lockup period is nearing the end?
No, that I am going to do the decreasing thing. It's a lot simpler if we don't, because it's kind of a pain to figure out the total supply of a whole bunch of users' voting power that is decreasing. But I'm working through it.
Cool, thanks.
We talked a little bit last week about what would come next on the engineering roadmap, and we don't need to get into that again today, but I just was curious, Doman in particular, since your project is wrapping up maybe later this week, have you thought much about what you would do next? If there's anything like the automated deployments that you were interested in working on, and publishing the DApp to IPFS, that kind of stuff, or did you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, those are the two. I have two things I want to tackle. One is the thing you mentioned, so the automated deployments with the IPFS hashes and the IPFS deployed files, and the other would be we have some ledger issues that I haven't. The pull request is open up, but I haven't brought home because there would need to be some different solution to it, and it fails. For some ledger users, it fails with, I think, especially with larger amounts when you want to swap. And I think that's, we probably want those, not deter those type of people. So yeah, that's the second one.
Sure. And since you mentioned that, it seems like we still get some questions about the choosing a derivation path and it maybe not working. And I've never gotten to the bottom of that. Does anybody know if that's still a problem or if it's been resolved?
I haven't tested. I think
Tom fixed it, no?
I think we still heard some scattered ones after that.
Yeah, within like the past 2 weeks, there have been 2 people complain about it.
The ones I saw were sort of questions about what a derivation path is and how it works, rather than it not doing what it's meant to.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen them all, though.
Okay. Yeah, I think I asked for more information from one person and they didn't follow up, so maybe they just clicked around until they got it to work. But let's watch for that, because as you said, Doman, and as Josh has mentioned before, these are high-value users.
Yeah, I think the most, the worst issue right now with Ledger is that our redeems, our gas estimate is wrong. And so if you're using Ledger, it will, redeems will fail. And then there's no way, with our current implementation, there's no way to change the gas limit. So it's going to fail, and you're kind of helpless if you use our current implementation to fix it.
Yikes. Okay. That's definitely something we should fix.
It's good for circulating supply, though, so maybe it's a P4, I don't know.
that means it's not good for the price on curve pool.
Correct. This is correct.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'll make sure that we've got that one in GitHub along with something else that I already made a note on and I've since forgotten. That's a good thing it's in the notes. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about governance proposals. I I noticed that last week we only had 2 voters on our funds allocation. I know that one, it might get old because it happens every week, but it's good to have everyone participating in that. So just a friendly reminder that we've got this week's strategy allocation vote opening up in a few hours, and I will post a reminder maybe tomorrow or the next day in Discord. And then when Doman wraps up these harvest upgrades on the engineering side, he's also putting together a proposal to formally get approval for the amount of the incentive that we pay for decentralized actors to trigger the harvest function. So that's on its way. Are there any other informal proposals or any governance topics that I missed?
I was just going to flag the fact that for our governance, we have a 1 million OGN threshold for it to reach quorum. And so last week's strategy, didn't reach quorum. That was actually ended up being a good thing just because the market moved and the proposed changes didn't make economic sense. I forget if it was Compound or Avi, we were going to move funds and the rates had swung the other direction. So it didn't make a lot of sense for us to execute it. And so, the threshold there actually came, to help us. But that's something for us to keep in mind. Going forward, we do need to see at least 1 million OGN voting for us to actually execute on these things as part of our stated governance rules.
That's good to know. I didn't realize that, but I did vote, so I did my part. Okay, let's see, Daniel. A couple things that I had from you on the discussion agenda. Thanks for posting your personal roadmap, to-do list, Notion doc in Discord. Was there anything you wanted to say about that? And then while we've got you, go ahead and jump into the strategist allocation process improvements if you want to.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything really, well, it's kind of my high-level goals and then broken down into what inside each one of those I'm currently working on or is kind of on the table. As far as my next work coming up, will be kind of the meta strategies out there, strategy works out there, Wrapped OUSD is sort of out there, and the Dripper is sort of out there. In thinking about it this week, it seems like likely the highest priority thing I can work on is something to make our strategist voting better. It ends up taking a bit of my week each time to figure out what the best way is to get to the new allocations. And I think the current process for picking allocations is kind of painful every time you start with a blank slate and you don't really know where it is and you don't know what the effects are of switching between things. And so I think a good way to free up my time and to make the voting more effective would be to build a UI for that so that you can see where things, as soon as you come into it, you can see where things are, possibly see what people have voted on so far, see the yields, and then as you move things around in that view, you would be seeing how much, if there's any slippage cost, how much it would cost, how much is the maximum amount that can be withdrawn, whether this changes what the default strategies would need to be. And so basically gives somebody an intuitive feel for how much, the costs of it. It's not just blank numbers sitting there, as well as showing them the benefits in terms of APY side of things. But I'd love any discussion on how much effort we should put in there and what would be useful.
That whole thing would be amazing. One thing that stood out to me there that you mentioned was how other people vote, because the way our voting is weighted, there's an interesting little game dynamic where you don't necessarily vote for what you want. You vote in a way to cause what you want to be the outcome based on what votes have already been cast. I've found myself doing that a couple times.
I tried not to in case anybody copies me. But but I have put some thought into that.
Yeah, well, I've copied you too, so I guess I'm all over the place.
But yeah, it should be something that whatever we have can go live and can be incrementally improved, so it shouldn't be something we get stuck into pouring tremendous amounts of effort and just get as much low-hanging fruit as we can.
And so this would not replace Snapshot. This would just be like an ancillary tool that you would use to decide how you want to vote on Snapshot, right? And then it would help automate what you're doing after the vote is cast.
That'd be my thinking, at least for the start of it. Is it would just be a URL you go to probably on analytics and just, yeah, you'd see where things are and what effects changing things would have.
How do other projects do it? Like, is there anything we could reuse as opposed to building ourselves?
In my experience, a lot of projects don't have open source front end code, but I haven't looked at this specific process, like for how Yearn does it or whoever.
Yeah, I think Yearn is probably the first one to look at and see how they do it. But there's certainly plenty of other up and coming projects that we should take a look at as well.
It's also worth at least thinking about how this might eventually tie into what Tom is doing. This is sort of like an isolated, specific case within, the broader on-chain governance that we'll end up having. So it doesn't necessarily have to be integrated with the front end that he will eventually have that does replace Snapshot. But at least we're thinking about how they might cross paths.
Yeah, that's worth thinking about.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on roadmap, governance? What else did we cover? Liquidity mining. Does anyone want to introduce themselves or let us know what they're working on? Offer a comment. Tell us what we can be doing better. Hi.
Hey, it's Paul. I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself and see if I could possibly just work on some different stuff on OUSD, on the multi-chain stuff. And just, I guess I can kind of discuss it on Discord, like on the text version.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for introducing yourself. What's your background or where are you located?
I'm a product manager, and I'm up in Boston.
I think I know you, Paul, don't I?
Yes, you do. So my goal is basically just try to learn and help out wherever I can. I know I was listening to the call last week, and it sounds like Tom's not going to work on the multi-chain stuff for a couple weeks or a couple sprints, or sprint or two. Maybe if I can help out and do whatever I need to help you guys out, that'd be great. And then I can also learn. But we can talk offline too.
Nice. Well, it's great to have you here. Nice to see you have an avatar. It's more interesting than mine. But yeah, we'd love to get you to weigh in on multi-chain stuff, and that's certainly something that's really important to us on the medium-term roadmap. I would say. Anyone else want to say hi or offer any comments or criticism? If you think of something, don't hesitate. But otherwise, let's see. We had one action item for me to make sure that we get a couple of things in GitHub. And then there were a couple of older action items that I had that I just wanted to revisit so we didn't forget. One was well, they both pertain to the DApp. One is that we've got the stuff on the earn page pointing people to the curve pool, which probably is misguided. I think the conclusion I reached there is that we also have this recurring confusion about OGN staking within the OUSD DApp. And it seems like we should just move that. I think, Daniel, you made that suggestion again, that we just move it out of the OUSD DApp, or seriously consider doing that. So I think we might want to just do that at the same time that we refresh the website and we get rid of the call to action for the curve pool. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, maybe Matt, we can follow up separately and decide what we want to do there. But I don't think we necessarily need to update that page today because there's a lot of unanswered questions there about what would happen if we did that. And then the other thing is that we have the confusion sometimes about the pending rebase figure going down or being stuck at zero. That hasn't really been a problem since we had this conversation 2 weeks ago. And once we have these harvest upgrades, we're hoping that we'll have a smoother APY, something more predictable, and more frequently triggered rebase. Although I think, Daniel, we decided that rebase will no longer get called in conjunction with harvest. Is that true? Is that how it's going to work out?
We need to have a discussion to make sure we're sure on that. I was thinking we could disconnect them and it'd make things simpler and harvest smaller and faster. But there could be an argument on both sides, and we should just hash it out.
I'm just writing an issue for that, and I'll paste it in Discord in like a couple of minutes, and would love your thoughts on it. Micah, Josh, Tom, Daniel.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, let's do that there in GitHub so everybody can jump in if they want to. All right. So yeah, I don't think we'll do anything with the DApp yet until we figure out how this is going to play out with the changes to the harvest. Any other action items or things to take away from this meeting? If not, we'll see you same time, same place next week. And if you're holding OUSD, you will have more than you have now.